Good evening, everyone, and you're all very welcome to tonight's webinar, which has been brought to you tonight by the Teagasc advisory staff here in County Mayo. My name is Brendan Garry, and I work in Teagasc and Ballinrobe, and tonight, for the next hour, I'm delighted to be your host, where the focus switches to two key topics. And the first topic tonight is agricultural education, which is commonly known to many farm families as the Green Cert. And my colleague Padraig Walsh from Teagasc and Ballina is going to give us a thorough briefing on how you can complete the Green Cert with Teagasc. And Padraig will also outline the many benefits to completing the Green Cert course. Also tonight, we'll be looking at the various farm schemes in operation for 2021. And tonight, Kevin O'Hara from Teagasc and Ballinrobe will also give us an overview on the main farming schemes with many upcoming deadlines that farmers need to watch out for over the next 5 to 6 weeks. And I think it's fair to say that every farm family knows the importance of direct payments. So I'm sure Kevin's presentation will have something there for every farmer. Also tonight, we'll be keeping this webinar as interactive as we can, and you, the viewers, are being encouraged to engage with our panelists here tonight through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens, and we'll try and answer as many of these questions live tonight, and any unanswered questions then will be followed up in the coming days. And later this evening, Vivian Silke, the Regional Manager here in County Mayo, will put your questions to our panelists here tonight. So please type your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and will be available to watch back in the coming days on our Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel. And certainly look at, you can watch all the previous episodes also there as well. So without further delay, I'm now going to ask Padraig Walsh there from Teagasc and Ballina to start sharing your presentation, and it's over to you, Padraig. That's okay. That's perfect now, Padraig, yeah. And just unmute yourself as well, okay? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Brendan. As you said there, now that's the plan. Essentially, what I'm going to cover there for the next few minutes is the benefits and the delivery options there for the Teagasc Mayo Green Cert course. I suppose that's what we're hoping to do here. And I suppose without further ado, I'll just kind of outline there, I suppose, really, a little bit about Teagasc Education, where we're at, and how we operate the course. I suppose as it stands, Teagasc has two regional education centres here in Mayo, Teagasc office in Ballina and Teagasc in Ballinrobe in Ballina. I suppose the bigger office is Ballinrobe. Traditionally, those courses run in Ballina for many years, and we're running courses there too. And such has been the demand in recent times that we're also running courses out of the Ball Resource Centre there in the middle of the county. We do this with the cooperation of a lot of local farmers, other bodies as well, such as Mayo, Sligo, Mart, other stakeholders, Ballinrobe Racecourse and others. It's not that we're racing horses, but they have been very open to us using their facilities there for things like tractor driving and those kind of skills, fencing skills and that kind of thing. So look, we do this in conjunction with a lot of very good local farmers and other stakeholders. I suppose in the options that we have there for the Green Cert in Mayo, in our region, there's two options really. The Teagasc Distance Education Green Cert course is one option, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. The Teagasc part-time course for adults 23 years of age and older is another course that we've been running for many years. I suppose that was the traditional course that has been running for going back 20, 30 years. The distance course perhaps is a new addition to our option range. And just to put kind of note there that really agricultural college would be the route there. We're saying for people that are under 23 years of age that maybe wouldn't qualify for the distance course. The ag college route for school leavers would be the route that a lot of people there would go. We're very close to Mount Bellew Agricultural College. There's a lot of other colleges around the country as well, I suppose, Ballyhaise and Gurteen in the semi-immediate area, and a lot of students would go there as well. So it's an option there for people directly from school to go to ag college. But as I said, the two main options that we run in our local centres, the distance education Green Cert course and the part-time course for adults 23 years of age and older. And just looking at that in a little bit more detail, the first one I'm looking at is the distance education Green Cert course. To participate in that, we Teagasc have a requirement there for people to participate in it. And a level 6, I suppose, is what we're looking for. A level 6 QQI non-agricultural major award required for participation. Now, that sounds like a big mouthful, but what are we talking about? It's someone there that would have a degree or an apprenticeship or something like that done. And I suppose really on the basis of having that level of attainment already achieved. People that have that should hopefully then be in a good position to participate in the distance course, because it does depend on and rely on people working away at home on their own. There isn't as many class days at all as the other part-time class. We're talking about maybe 25 days over about 18 months to run this course. So we're talking maybe a day or two a month every month for 18 months, coming to 25, 27 days maybe. COVID has had an implication there in this regard, and it's changing the way we deliver it. And I suppose it is worth making the point that it's not an online course. In our normal model, we would definitely go the route of getting the people in every day, perhaps in those 25 days that the morning session would be indoors doing assessments and some course delivery, group work, that kind of thing, and alternating then maybe in the afternoon going out to do skills assessment, skills delivery, practical work out on farms, the farms that work with us, as I previously mentioned. And the material in the course, or what's the delivery, what are we looking at? There's skills for sure, and Teagasc would be very strong on skills delivery and assessment. There are exams, of course, to be done also, practical work and assignments. And I suppose perhaps with the advent of COVID and we've had to change things a little bit there in regard how we assess people. Whereas it was possible to bring people into classrooms doing written exams and written exams, in a classroom situation with people crammed into rooms. We're not allowed certainly do that now. Well, they weren't crammed, but you know what I mean. In COVID terms, they were. That's not allowed. So a lot of what we're doing currently is assessing exam assignments, I suppose, that people are submitting online or submitting on paper or whatever, to show they have the necessary knowledge gained of the modules that they're studying away at home. And the Distance Education Green Cert course, it's a level 5 certificate in farming, certificate in agriculture, and level 6 combined. There's two different elements to it, even though it's kind of in under the heading Green Cert. The part-time option for adults that are 23 years of age and over, again, has two components, level 5 and level 6, and we typically would, where the other class would run them in conjunction with each other in the part-time option that we're talking about here, you'd complete the level 5 first and then the level 6. And the model up to this really has been maybe taken over 2.5 years to complete the course, usually a day a week. It's usually a weekday in the model we have. We've done some night classes as well. We've had bigger numbers and bigger demand for the days, even though it's a weekday and people have to work around that, etc. But that has worked fairly well. It's good that we can, again, in daytime, go out then and spend mornings indoors, afternoons outdoors, where we're allowed, or where weather allows, or where the course allows it. More contact time than the distance option for sure. And it's paced accordingly. There's more scope to discuss things, academic and otherwise. And I suppose in that class, guys and girls would say that they learn as much from their colleagues as they would from ourselves. There is great scope there to discuss things in these classes, and people learn from each other, very much so. The benefits of doing courses, as we'd see them, or as hope we'd be providing people, really would be technical skills on animal husbandry and land use management. Certainly, the main enterprises, the beef, the sheep, would be the vast majority of our students in the region there would have beef or sheep, a certain number of dairy students as well. So on the technical side there, we'd be strong on that. Exposure to good farming activity and practices on local farms. Again, we're not in an ag college, but the advantage of this is that we get out to lots of local farms when we're allowed to. And we see lots of good farming activity there, and lots of variation and different approaches to doing things. Also, farm safety, farming sustainably from an economic and environmental point of view is something that we'd be very strong on as well. And certainly, given that an awful lot of our students are working off farm, work-life balance and time efficiency and provision of facilities there to make sure that people can work safely, I suppose, are a big focus that we'd have also. Training in computer-based farm financial management skills. You know, there's a lot of products there, I suppose, cost control planner, profit monitors, and other spreadsheets that are available to us that we use. And communication and leadership skills are developed also within our classes. We focus on the communication module. It's a good means to which people can work in groups and develop their skills and presentations and interviews and that kind of thing. And we also do benchmarking discussion groups at level 6 level also. So again, look at communication, leadership skills development. So it's not just all just technical knowledge by any means. Other benefits, you know, important there, I suppose, the traditional revenue commissioner benefit that people would have experienced before or would have seen as a benefit of doing the Green Cert was the stamp duty relief for young trained farmers. And I'm just highlighting some of these. You know, we're not getting into them in any huge detail here other than just kind of telegraphing a little bit about them. Stamp duty relief for young trained farmers. Stamp duty on the transfer of land is charged at the rate of 7.5%, but someone who's young, and young is under 35 at the time of transfer for this, and trained has the Green Cert done, and farmer is that they're farming with a herd number, you know, would hopefully, you know, provide them meet all the terms and conditions, spend half the normal working time farming, etc. Get full relief on that 7.5% stamp duty. Like, so that can come to quite a bit of money. There are other consanguinity relief further down the page there can kick in if in a family situation also if young trained farmer relief doesn't. Enhanced stock relief, normal stock relief is 25%, but you can get 100% stock relief on up to for the first 4 years of farming if someone is under 35 years of age. And succession partnerships tax credit, that's another tax credit that's a recent addition to the benefit mix, I suppose, there, and that applies to people that are less than 40 years of age. Now, that's the thing people need to be aware of. There's 35 for young farmers, there's 40 for young farmers, depending on which category that you're talking about, and so people need to be clear on this. It's not 35 for everything, it's not 40 for everything. So it's something that would need to be checked out in a big way. Agricultural relief from capital acquisitions tax, again, that's something that could kick in also. To get a capital acquisitions tax is charged on the transfer of land, that you know, be it from inheritance or the other way. But terms and conditions there kick in for that, you know, in terms of agricultural relief. The farmers would have to pass the farmer test, you know, 80% of their assets. But also there is this idea there that they have to spend either 50% of their normal working time farming or have the Green Cert done. Consanguinity relief, I mentioned it there, from stamp duty. Again, where in a family situation where land is being transferred, there is the notion there of stamp duty relief possible for that family situation, even if someone is over 35 years of age. And again, you know, we'd want to be aware of that one. Age limits, I just put that in there in brackets. Is there an age limit there on the transferor or the transferee? There isn't at present, but there had been an age limit on the transferor before. It was 67. It was removed, but there's talk of it coming back in again, or identifying an age in this year. Certainly in the year 2021, there's talk of identifying an age for the transferor. We don't know when it will be applied, just that they're talk of identifying it this year. And there's possibly other benefits as yet unknown there for revenue also. Potential benefits from the Department of Agriculture. You know, again, I'm looking at young farmers here and I'm looking at the age of 40. And again, you know, highlighting that that's not 35 for this particular side of things. So the Young Farmer Scheme top-up payments, and Kevin will be talking about this a little bit more later, is for farmers that are under 40 years of age at a certain time in their farming. And, you know, the Green Cert would be required there to avail of those top-up payments. People with the Green Cert done may be able to acquire BPS entitlements from the National Reserve. Also, not only the Young Farmer top-up, but young, you know, National Reserve entitlements. Kevin again will be looking at this, a new entrance to farming also. And the TAM side of things, and Kevin is going to touch on that also. But a key point here is, like, a few years ago, we didn't know about any of these kind of benefits. They didn't exist. There's other benefits that may well yet be unknown under the new cap, because the cap is being reformed, and, you know, perhaps these things will be continued. Perhaps there'll be another string brought into it. It's as yet unknown. And further information there, we'd be very much saying, look, as we're highlighting these few bits and pieces, but people should really talk to their Teagasc advisors or ag consultants, for their own particular case. Certainly talk to accountants and solicitors, because some of the things we've talked on there, there's huge taxes can kick in on the transfer of land, and it's important that people would, sort this well out in advance. There's an awful lot of ins and outs in individual cases there. We have Teagasc have a Transferring the Family Farm booklet, the 2020 version. It's available online at www.teagasc.ie. We have a certain number of hard copies of it in our offices, and when our offices become a bit more open to the public, we'll be able to share them with people. And there was an excellent presentation done. Transferring the Family Farm online event in November 2020 was delivered there by some of our Teagasc colleagues last year. It's on the Teagasc YouTube channel, so if you Google that, you'd find some excellent information on the whole idea of transferring the family farm and the capital taxes and the benefits of the Green Cert in that regard. Just getting back to the course itself and how we deliver, it's a mix of lecture time and practical time, and skills and practicals and exams, I suppose, really are what I mentioned earlier. The practicals indoors and outdoors. Project work is part of the course for sure. And we do the skills training and assessment on the local farms. Perhaps some of the Teagasc centres also, and Ballinrobe, as we said, and Ballinrobe, racecourse, different centres, where people get to express themselves and show their ability. I want to reassure people that are interested that we want everyone to exceed in the courses, and assistance will be given as appropriate to support students. And assistance there based on needs. So we're kind of talking about, scripters or readers or whatever may be appropriate in particular scenarios. And it is the case that a lot of students require assistance, and if it's required, it's given. And problems are generally solvable. So, we'd like to welcome, people to the course, and people should very much visit us and see, can they participate? Don't be feeling there's no reason that they cannot participate in our courses. There is a good level of support there. In terms of the modules and like what is discussed or what is dealt with in the courses, and modules are essentially the subjects we deal with. Again, this is we do our work through QQI. QQI or our accreditation body. It's Teagasc running the course, but it's verified through QQI, of course. And we've developed these modules and credits, which are based on the time spent at the modules, the subjects. Some are compulsory, some are optional. And the compulsory ones there are the bold ones at the top of the page in level 5, principles of agriculture, safety, environment, work practice, this kind of thing. Safe use of pesticides, of course, biz and technology, the kind of stuff I suppose you'd expect to see. Communications is optional. Beef and grass and sheep production is from a menu as well. We definitely go with them. And chemical fertilizer application is a module we do also at level 5. Level 6, which is more of a management level, with dealing with work practice, farm management, business planning, farm performance measurement, which is benchmarking your performance against other farmers, sustainable farming in the environment. Obviously, grassland management and applied livestock breeding are things we're very strong on, and people are interested in, because most people in our area are on grazing ground. It's not tillage, so we're keen in that regard, because most people have animals and grass, and the management of which is key to farming nowadays, of course. The fees, just for people, the current fee for the distance course is €2,990, whereas for the part-time course it's €1,700. There is an additional fee now, just telegraphing that, for a part-time course if people have a level 6 award. So a lot of people that would have a level 6 award would gravitate towards the distance course, but if they went the route of the part-time course, there's an extra fee to be paid for that, €1,000. Why? Because people would have, with the level 6, would have availed of capitation before previously, and fees are subject to change. Just in terms of the progression, what could people, is there scope to progress from the course to other courses, or what's the role for graduates, or what do we find? I suppose, in fairness, the majority of our graduates from our Green Cert classes would go back to the farm, or, for a lot of people, the indications are that they're farming and working off farm as well. So a lot of people go back to the home farm or other farms. potentially on other farms. But if people did want to progress on to a level 7 degree or higher, they could add a few more credits to their Green Cert that we do to complete the Advanced Cert in Agriculture, and that would leave them with a higher level 6 award, which would allow progression to a degree or higher thereafter. So that's kind of the scope. It does fit into the overall QQI framework. That's essentially a run through. Now it's a quick run through indeed, but you know, if there's any questions, of course, we'll take them, I suppose, at the end. That's
great,
where we're at.
That's brilliant. I'll just get you now just to maybe stop sharing your presentation, Padraig. But thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. You gave us a lot of information there. And indeed, look, we have some questions coming in there from our attendees tonight. So, you know, keep them coming in. And indeed, at this stage now, I'm going to ask my colleague, Kevin O'Hara from Teagasc Ballinrobe, to start sharing his presentation with us. And it's over to you now, Kevin. That's perfect. Now, Kevin, thank you for that now. Okay.
So look, I'm just going to do a quick overview of the farm investment schemes and the rural development programs that are available at the minute. As some of these are very case specific, so we won't be focusing too much on certain elements of it, but we'll get the overview of them all. So this is your direct payments. There's just a quick overview of them here. Your main one is your basic payment scheme. Greening is involved in that. Then you have your area of natural constraints, areas of specific constraints, your island scheme. That would be the headage of old that people might know of. It has now become ANC. Was you have your young farmer scheme, as Padraig was on about, a national reserve for young farmer new entrants. So as we go on, we'll look at this in more detail. So the BPS is probably the main one. It's what sets the precedent for the rest of the year. It's typically the biggest payment most farmers will be receiving. So land eligibility plays a vital role for this. So one entitlement requires one eligible hectare for drawdown. So if a farmer has 20 hectares and he has 20 entitlements, all the 20 hectares should be eligible if he wants to claim his 20 entitlements. Issues like that were undergrazing and that sort of thing can come in as issues for eligibility here. BPS entitlement transfers allows farmers to lease out or sell surplus entitlements. So back to the fellow with 20 hectares again, if he had 5 hectares leased, he lost 5 hectares, he'd have 5 entitlements with nowhere to go. So he can either lease them out, sell the entitlements, or he can get additional land to draw them down. The good agricultural and environmental conditions, or the GAC is what that was typically known as. That's relevant to the eligibility here. It's essentially that the land isn't overgrown, it isn't overpoached. A massive one at the minute, and it seems to be an issue every year around this time, is that the land is not burnt. So land that is burnt out of season is not eligible for BPS payment. So the closing date for this scheme has changed. It used to always be the 15th of May. They changed it this year just to the 17th, mainly just because it's fallen on a Monday. It had closed on a Saturday and a Sunday before, and it caused issues that way. And amendments then are available up to the 31st of May. So essentially, once you have it submitted by the 15th or by the 17th of May, you can amend and add in or take out land for 2 weeks thereafter. So this can be relevant for fellas that are renting land, etc. So our area natural constraints then. So this is a key scheme for farmers working in designated areas. All of Mayo is in it. A lot of the country is in it, in fairness. There's payments of up to 4,000 available. So it's relevant to the amount of hectares you're farming and the type of hectares you're farming. So the 4,000 is for hill farmers. There's a reduced rate then for lowland, and then a reduced rate for less disadvantaged thereafter. So there's a minimum stock rate required of 0.15 livestock units per hectare for 12 months. So that's essentially saying that's a yo essentially for 12 months of the year per hectare. So if you have a 100-acre farm, you need to have 40 yos for the 12 months, or you can use cattle or sheep, whatever way you want to mix it up. There's a higher stocking rate required where a farmer is only keeping animals for the minimum 7 consecutive months. So to claim the ANC, you have to keep stock for a minimum of 7 months. The reason you don't have to keep them for the 12 is essentially for people that don't have winter housing facilities, etc. It's allowing farmers to buy maybe this time of the year, run them for the summer, and sell them then in the back end. And it's a simple enough system for people that way. There has become a change in the eligibility of the donkeys. So like it changes to donkey eligibility with regards to livestock units. Before, if you needed 5 livestock units, we'll say, you could have 5 donkeys and they covered you. But now, if you need 5 donkeys, or if you need 5 units, you can only use 2.5, 3 donkeys essentially, 2 to 3 donkeys and 2 to 3 other units. So you're going to have to mix it up again with a mix of cattle or sheep. So that is a big change. It's not a massive issue for most people, but it is an issue for some. So the Young Farmer Scheme, this is what Padraig was touching on earlier. It's a very important scheme for young farmers. You know, it's great money, it's a great help to farmers trying to get set up and get into farming. You know, if they're starting from more or less a low base or nothing at all, in a lot of cases, it's a useful fund to spend on the farm. Though at the top up on entitlements to about 25% of what they're worth to eligible trained young farmers up to limits. So at the minute, you're paid up to 50 hectares. So that's equating to about 25% of what the national average is 260 euros. So 25% of that is about 63 or 4 euros. And it's by 50 hectares, you're looking at about 3,400 or 3,200 per year. There's no off-farm limit on this, so if you're working off-farm, you can claim this, no issue. There is an age limit of 40 years in the year of first BPS application, and you cannot turn 41 in year of applications. That's a big one there. A farmer can only claim this payment for a max of 5 years. So if you're farming for 6 or 7 years, you'll only get it for the 5. And if you've been farming pre 5 years, you're going to run into trouble as well. So in the case of joint herd numbers, farm partnerships, the young farmer must be able to demonstrate that they are involved in decision making and have control of the holding. That is becoming a big issue. Every year there's issues with this, where, you know, sons or daughters are put onto herd numbers, their mother or father are farming at home, they might be working in Dublin, they might be working in America, and they're claiming these payments. That is not allowed. You have to actually farm on the land in partnership with whoever you're in the joint herd number for. So the next bit then is your National Reserve young farmer. So eligible farmers are allocated entitlements from the National Reserve, typically to national average level. So that's back to your 260 euros a hectare again. They cannot be farming longer than 5 years at the time of application. Must be no more than 40 years of age. The big one here now is an off-farm income limit of 40,000 per annum. So when you're doing your young farmer application or National Reserve application, you have to submit either your self-assessment, what used to be your P60, or something of that description that shows your total off-farm income if you are working off-farm. Where that is becoming an issue as well is in the case of the joint herd number as well. If you have 2 people in a joint herd number, that 40,000 is split between the 2 of them. So essentially it's 20,000 each. So that could knock a lot of people out there if they were to go in on a joint herd number or a registered farm partnership as well. That's the same principle. So the applicant must have a Green Cert completed at the time of application. The BPS application must be submitted as well. And in the case of joint herd numbers, the applicant has to be able to demonstrate control of the enterprise. So that's the same as for the young farmers. The person that's claiming this actually has to be doing some of the farming at home. So there's another category to this. There's a National Reserve new entrant. So there's no age cap on this one. It's similar to the young farmer category with regards to qualifications, off-farm income, entitlement allocation, and BPS applications. Currently, any holding set up before 2019 is not eligible for this category. So if you have a herd number that's set up, if say you're 40, or say you're 50 years of age, we'll say, if you had a herd number set up pre-2019, you cannot claim it. But if you've only set up the herd number since 2019 for the 2021 application, you can apply. So there's no upper age limit on it, as I said. So whatever, you can work away whatever age you are, and this is a big, very important one now, and I have to stress this one because a lot of people get caught on this. You can only get one allocation from the National Reserve. So where guys have gone wrong on this, we'll say they've maybe started farming with 5 or 10 hectares, something small, and then they might get an extra bit of land, and then maybe another bit of land. And because they've gone to the National Reserve once, they cannot go again. So that's the same for a new entrant or a young farmer. Once you go in at all, you cannot go the second time. So you try to make the most use of it when you're going in. So, if you only got a small bit of land this year, it might be no harm to hold out and go in next year or the year after. So the terms then, this is the Targeted Agriculture and Modernization Scheme. It's essentially the grants for the sheds and all the milk and parlours, etc. There's a range of them in it here. So your Young Farmer Capital Investment Scheme. So everything that goes in under that is at 60%. More or less everything that's below this goes into that is available in the Young Farmer Scheme. But all the ones below this are at 40%. So your Dairy Equipment Scheme, so that's for your milk and parlours, your bulk tanks, cluster movers, all that sort of stuff is in there. Your low emission slurry spreading, so that's for your slurry tanker with dribble bar or trail and shoe, or retrofitting a dribble bar or a trail and shoe to an existing tanker. Your animal welfare, safety and nutrient storage, so that's covering your your sheds, your animal handling, so your mobile sheep penning, mobile cattle handling, head scoops. Your sheep fencing is in that, which is a very important, very useful one at the minute. Your slurry tanks, everything is in that. Your meal bins as well, all that is in that section. Your pigs and poultry, they're very specific to your industry you're in. Organic Capital Investment Scheme, so you have to be an organic farmer to get that. John Noonan will be discussing the organic capital or the organic scheme next week on the last webinar we're having. He'll be going into more detail in it there. And then your tillage capital investment scheme, so that covers the likes of ring rollers, fertilizer spreaders, etc. But yet again, you have to be a tillage farmer to get it. So as I said, all of these are typically available under the Young Farmers thing. So if you wanted to put in a milk and parlour and you were a young farmer, you put it in as a Young Farmer Capital Investment Scheme, and that's the way you get your 60% then. So it covers on-farm capital investments. I suppose the biggest part of it is with all of these here, it's capped at 80,000. So you're allowed to spend of 80,000 per individual. So if you are on your own, you're allowed 80,000, and you get, say, for the young farmer, you get 60% of that. But for an old farmer, you get 40% of it. In the case of joint herd numbers and partnership, well, more so registered farm partnerships, a registered farm partnership is essentially 2 herd numbers. So you get the 80,000 by the 2. So if you have a young farmer and an old farmer, I would say, on a registered farm partnership, you get 60% of 80,000 and you get 40% of 80,000 as well. So they are typically on your big spends. Like you'd see a lot of that on the dairy side, where maybe putting in new milk and parlours or robots or something along that description. So it's done in a tranche system. So the next tranche is closing on the 16th of the 4th, and it's opening up again the day after. So it closes today and it opens tomorrow, I'll say. So each one is its own application. So you can put one in on the 16th, and then you can put another one in on the 17th, and it's in a different tranche. So this has become a big part of it now as well, the ranking of applications. So essentially, they're oversubscribed at the minute, so there's more people applying for them than there is money to hand out. So not everyone is going to get approval. So we'll say a young farmer will get a higher point system, a higher point ranking than an older farmer. A farmer that has never claimed before will get a higher ranking than someone that has as well. Say for the likes of the low emission slurry spreading, a farmer that's in derogation will get a higher points for his application than a farmer that isn't. So there's grant rates there is again like it's 60 and 40. So it's 60 for the young and 40 for the older farmers, and it's capped at 80,000 a piece. So I suppose a big part of that too, like 80,000, it's 80,000 plus VAT. So you could be looking at a spend of up on 100,000, and you're going to get 60% of the 80, and you get your VAT back after that. So there's a deadline then for completion of investment works. So like typically, if you got approval today for a shed, you've typically got 12 months to get it completed. Now, with the COVID and everything at the minute, there's a 3-month grace period there. We'll say that you just have to apply for, and the department typically gives it out to you. In the case of sheds or stuff like that, maybe bigger stuff, you can get a 6-month extension, but you have to notify the department in time, and you have to have the shed started. So there's no point looking for an extension if you haven't even dug out a tank. If you have, say, a tank in and you're awaiting a roof or something on a shed, you can apply for the grant thereafter, or you can apply for the extension, sorry. So there's inspections with all these, as is with every scheme, and another part of it here is the health and safety training. So to draw down your TAMS payment, you have to have a health and safety course completed, or you can use your Green Cert if you had recently completed it as well. So we'll just look a few more schemes here, your specific support. So there's the BEEP S and the Dairy Calf scheme for 2021. They're the two new ones. The BEEP was there before. The Dairy Calf is kind of a newish scheme. The Sheep Welfare scheme is the same as it always was. The Straw Incorporation is a new one. We wouldn't have a whole lot of men looking to incorporate straw in the west of Ireland, I'd imagine. Your BDGP, so that's your Beef Data Genomics, or your STARS, as some of you might call it. That has been rolled over. Now, to get a rollover on it, you had to apply for it. So I would hope anyone that wanted it to roll over has rolled it over at this stage. Same with the GLAS. GLAS 1 and 2 have finished essentially, but they have been rolled over for another year. GLAS 3 is in its final year. So at the end of this year, GLAS 3 participants will be finished and possibly maybe rolled over again. It's just going to be a case specific as the year goes on. So the organic farming scheme, so that's a new one as well. That's recently is opening this year again. John Noonan's going to talk about that next week, so I won't go into any more detail on that. I'll just do a quick run across the beef sector efficiency program, or the BEEP-S. It reopened for applications on the 16th of March, and it's closing on the 26th of April. So it has a budget for 40 million, which is a substantial budget in fairness. It has a potential grant aid of up to €8,100 available per suckler cow. So that's for a farm with 100 cows. So it's paid per cow, per calf, I'll say. So the more cows you have, the more payments you get. There's a couple of sides to it, like you have to weigh them. You have options then, such as your vaccinations, etc. We can look at that later on. So there's mandatory and optional action similar to last year, so it's more or less the same as last year. It's a very good scheme. I would say it's money for jam. It's not a big job to weigh calves. You have to do a bit of meal feeding. It's going to pay to feed them anyway. You have to do a dung sample. It pays to do that as well. And with the vaccinations, if you choose that as well, it's going to pay for itself too. So it is a good scheme to get into, and there is a nice payment out of it. So the dairy beef calf scheme for 2021 as well, it's a 1-year program. Its closing date is the 26th of April as well. You have to apply online via AgFood, same as the beef. You must weigh a minimum of 5 calves, and the maximum to be paid on is 20 calves. And the payment rate is €20 per calf, and conditions apply with that. So essentially, like, the max you can draw down here is €400. It's better than nothing, I suppose. It all adds up. €400 would buy a couple of calves at the end of the year if you wanted to get a few extra ones. So your dairy calf scheme, like your eligible calf, so he has to be born after the 1st of January this year. The dam must be a dairy cow. If the sire is a dairy breed, only a male calf qualifies. So you won't get paid this on a dairy heifer. Even if she was a twin or something, you still won't get it. So if the sire is a beef breed, a male or a female qualifies. Must be at least 12 weeks old at weighing, and must be registered on the holding for at least 10 days before it can be weighed. And it's open to both beef and dairy farmers. So that's a big one. Like, there's a lot of lads have got into rearing maybe 10 or 20 calves. It might have cut down on a few cows or something and got into a lot of calves. It's a nice balance up. It's a nice payment to get on top of whatever else you're getting. So the next one we're looking at now, I suppose, is your exceptional aid measures. These are kind of a once-off thing, or they were supposed to be anyway, but one of them came again last year, I should say. So here's your beef finisher payment for 2020. So essentially, a farmer just applied for that and he got paid. The previous one is one that has become a bit of an issue, is your beam. That was out in 2019. So there was €80 million allocated to 33,000 Irish beef farmers. The main requirement there was that you had a 5% reduction in organic bovine nitrogen in the period from the 1st of July 2020 to the 30th of June 2021, compared to a reference period from 2018 and 2019. So this has become a bit of an issue. A lot of farmers are struggling here to reach this 5%. If you've missed a lot of it already in 2020, you've already missed a good bit of it again in 2021. To get under the 5%, some fellas will have to reduce rapidly. So the department has rolled back somewhat on this. They have given up the option to use January 2021 to December 2021. And that's to allow farmers an additional time frame to get below the 5%. And you must apply for this date change. So this won't happen automatically. If you're already gone over it, you need to start looking into these things and see, will I get under it in 2021 in June, or will I have to spread it out for the rest of the year? This is a very case-specific scheme. I would always say to anyone, if you're not sure about it, go to an advisor. It's not really something that you should be sort of looking at on your own unless you have a fairly good idea of what you're looking at. Cattle change in regards with age as they come from a 1 to a 2-year-old, so there can be lots of issues with it there. So the next bit we'll just take a quick glance across is your forestry payments. There's planting and maintenance grants. They are very dependent on what you're actually planting. Your annual forestry premium, it runs for about 15 years. That's for your standard Sitka spruce. There is other ones there now newly added with, say, agroforestry, where you only grow lines of trees and you graze in between them. They are only on a 5-6 year payments on some of them, so they're all different. But your typical one is 15 years. The rate's based on species planted and options chosen. So if you plant a hardwood tree, say an oak or something like that, there's a higher payment rate on that than there is on your Sitka spruce plantation. There's a possible BPS payment as well. So if the land is forestry eligible, it was claimed back in a previous scheme 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 years ago, you can actually draw your BPS payment on it and your forestry payment at the same time. So Teagasc has forestry advisors and clinics in every region. Typically just contact your local office and they'll put you in contact with the forestry advisor. He might be covering a couple of counties, but he'll typically be in your area at some stage. We'll just touch on this for a minute. We won't stay too long on it because it's kind of a grey area at the minute. It's cap reform in the future. So there's talks of these carbon neutral suckler schemes, eco schemes with 20 to 30% of your direct payments. It's coming from sort of environmental sides of things compared to just getting it before this. Convergence is probably, it's there at the minute. So that's essentially high value entitlements becoming lower and low value entitlements becoming higher. It's there for the time being anyway. Whatever happens after this is another question. TAMS is a question. It has been extended for the rest of the year, more or less. Well, definitely 2 more tranches on it anyway. So it's there for this year. After that, we don't know. It's going to be a department issue there. And your REAP, you might have heard this. You hear it in popular media anyway. This is the new REPT, we'll call it. So they're having a results-based pilot scheme this year. There's only going to be a certain number of farmers let into this. We haven't had much detail on it yet, so it's kind of just out there at the minute. It hasn't been finalised or anything in regards to terms and conditions, so we don't know a whole lot more on it after that. And it's something just to keep an eye on if you're not in Glass or something like that. So it might pay you to join a scheme such as this. So that's all for me. Any questions after that, you can fire ahead. You can put them up on the questions and answers, and we'll get back to you as the meeting progresses.
That's brilliant, Kevin. And look, that's great. And thank you very much for that. And you might just stop your screen share there, please. And I'll just ask Padraig now just to come back as well. And at this stage now of the evening, I'm just going to ask Regional Manager Vivian Silke there to just to go through a lot of the questions that we've got in. We've got a lot of questions in. And look at Vivian, you have been seeing the questions coming in there, so there's lots of them there. So maybe if you want to maybe start putting the questions maybe to Padraig and Kevin, and indeed you, the viewers at home, can still ask questions there tonight. We have a little bit of time left, and to put the questions into the Q&A, you cannot ask a question by raising your hand. So it's over to you now, Vivian.
Thanks, Brendan, and thanks to everyone who's joined us this evening, and also the people who typed in the questions. There's a lot of questions to get through, folks, so I'll ask both Kevin and Padraig to keep reasonably short with the answers because we've a lot of questions to get through up and double bigger. So the first one, they're kind of chronological as the presentations were, so they're mostly with education. So I'll stick with you first for a few minutes, Park. On completion of the Green Cert, can young farmers retrospectively reclaim tax paid on land purchase prior to beginning the Green Cert course?
Retrospectively, yeah, they can. I suppose stamp duty there, I suppose, would be the main one that we're talking about. Usually, if, I said there, the young trained farmers relief is for under 35s. If at that stage the land was transferred into their name before they were 35, either through purchase or inheritance, they hadn't the course done, but they did the course subsequently. They have 4 years from the time the land is transferred to get the course done, and a further 4 years essentially then to draw down that money, which is to meet the terms and conditions, I suppose, to draw down that money, which would involve not only finishing the course within the 4 years, but thereafter getting a herd number, spending half their normal working time farming and fulfilling the other conditions. So yeah, it is possible if the transfer took place before they were 35.
Thanks, Padraig. A related question, but somewhat different. It's the other end of the spectrum, I suppose. I'm a 38-year-old farmer. Is it worth my while doing the Green Cert? I'll be over 40 by the time I'm finished.
Probably case specific more than Kevin mentioned before there, because the 38-year-old farmer could mean that you have a herd number and that you're farming for a number of years, and there's benefits there that are dependent on, they can depend on the number of years you're farming, as Kevin mentioned there, for some of the schemes. And that it could be at 38 years of age that if they were under 40 when they had the Green Cert finished, that's one thing. If they were over 40, they could potentially still gain entry to the National Reserve as a new entrant at over 40 years of age. Even they should look at their own case to see when they got their herd number and when they first submitted a BPS application as a new entrant. Also, as I mentioned there too, being agricultural, spending half your normal working time farming, or have the Green Cert done, are conditions for consanguinity relief and agricultural relief from capital acquisitions tax. So there could be benefits there at 38.
Thanks, Padraig. I'll just deal with these couple of questions myself. They're more or less related. It's in relation to our own handling and our own capacity to deliver the distance course. We have a long waiting list. We've almost 100 people on a waiting list for distance courses. We're going through some recruitment at the moment. It's looking like we'll be starting a distance course in mid-June at the moment. There's a huge waiting list for that, so the priority will be given to those. Depending on recruitment and depending on what level of interest there is following on from tonight and from, I suppose, queries we get during the year, we may be starting another distance course in the second half of the year coming autumn. So that all depends. We'll have you on a waiting list, and we'll just deal with it as it comes. And Cora owns our admin person is on top of that, and you can ring the office tomorrow if you've further queries on that one. So there's a couple of questions on that. I'm not going to go into the specifics of it. So that's just the answer for that one. Another one here, Padraig, somewhat tricky. What's your advice for a 34-year-old daughter-in-law as the husband and the only son he hasn't time or won't do the course?
That is a tricky one, right? Yeah, because do the course anyway, do the course. But this is where if that daughter-in-law was going to be the herd owner or keeping the herd number or was running the herd, I suppose they perhaps could get benefits out of it there. The extent, the legal side in terms of who's going to own the assets and the reliefs that are available to asset owners, we'd say, again, agricultural relief from capital acquisitions tax and stamp duty, are dependent on who owns the land. So you'd be talking to a solicitor there before you'd go, getting legal advice before you go any further. We couldn't, in a case like that, and without knowing the specifics of it, clarify what the benefits would be. But if she held the herd number, there's definite benefits there, as we outlined, for people that hold a herd number.
This is a question from someone who's obviously with ourselves or possibly another establishment doing a course at the moment, or just almost completed. If I have my Green Cert completed, but haven't received my cert before the 15th of May, where do I stand in relation to applying for the National Reserve?
Well, if they've, if someone is going to clarify that they have, if they have it fully completed and their
assignments
educational,
done and assignments done and
and
all
if
that.
their
Waiting for
education
verification,
provider, if it's with us or whoever, if they're in a position, if it's us that we're in a position there to provide confirmation, there's a form there for that. That people who, while they've the coursework done, may not be verified through QQI. If we certify for them, or if they can have it certified for themselves that they have the coursework completed, the department will accept that. But they won't get any National Reserve payments or Young Farmers top-ups until they present their cert to the department. Like, the department will look for proof later on in the year. So by payment time, if they have the course done, hopefully they'll be verified at that stage and can draw their payments at that time.
Yeah, it's a pretty real one part that comes up every year, that sort of scenario. A question here, I suppose that the answer is simple, but it mightn't be the most desirable one. Just started the Green Cert last October. Is there any way of getting a grant for a shed? Won't be finished until 2022.
Do you want to take that one, Kevin? Or will
yeah, sure. Look, he could apply for the 40% grant, but he won't get the 20. Or he won't get the 60. That's really the long and short of that one.
Yeah, that's it, Kevin. Yeah. Kevin, while you have the mic there, there's a couple of questions coming in for you there related to what you were talking about. So I'll get them here now. Just bear with me one tick. Okay, with regard to sheep welfare scheme, what is the criteria and how do you apply?
Well, it's closed at the minute, so it's only for those that are in it, as far as I'm aware. The criteria was before that you had to maybe, you had picked what you want to do. It depended if you're a hill flock or a lowland flock with regard to scanning or mineral supplementation. But at the minute, if you're not in, you can't win, as I say, so you can't get into it. That's it, finished.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, Kevin. There's a question here, and Brendan may have mentioned it, but is the recording available to view sometime after the session? And the answer to that one is yeah. We'll have it probably up on our own YouTube channels by the end of the week, Friday. I'd say Brendan can verify that later on at the end.
Yeah.
That's just for anyone that might have missed it or has to leave for whatever reason. The next question, Kevin, you mentioned there about the beam, confusions out there. What do you mean by deferring the beam 5% reduction?
Yeah, so essentially you were supposed to have your beam reduction nearly completed at this stage. So you can defer the year. You were supposed to reduce for 12 months. So they have changed now that you can defer the year from June or July last year to June, from June or July last year to June or July this year. And now you can change from that to January to December. So you're getting an extra 6 months more or less to play around with it. But you have to apply for that. So you have to go onto your ag food or get your planner and actually set out that you want to apply for the change in the dates. It's leaving people with a bit more scope that can cut back on sheep or cut back on cattle maybe for the summer months, and it might bring them under. Yeah.
Okay. Another question on Thames, Kevin. I'm hoping to apply for a shed under the grant, and I'm wondering, do I need planning permission for that?
Yeah, you can't apply for any TAMs until you have the plan and approval. So you won't get accepted unless you have the approval there on the date of application.
Okay, thank you. Another one on BEEP, or the BEEP-S as it's called this year. This is the third year now. It was called BEEP. The first year it's called BEEP-S. Last year, and it's called BEEP-S again this year. In connection with selling weanlings, how long after weighing can you sell the weanling suckler calf?
Yeah, so that's just 2 weeks as far as I'm aware. You just have to feed them you have to wean them, or you have to weigh them, and then you have to be meal feeding for 2 weeks prior to sale. So essentially you can weigh them anytime, and you have to be meal feeding them for 2 weeks prior to sale. So you have to have record of purchase a meal at least 2 or 3 weeks before the date of sale. That's the biggest part of it.
Okay. Just one more. Okay, there's one or two of them here. We'll just have to follow them up with a kind of individual email or query tomorrow. They're just too case specific and too sensitive to go through now. Just another one that's coming in here. If you've just started the Green Cert, should you stay away from changing the herd number now?
Again, I suppose there's implications there, I suppose, of getting a herd number. In certain instances, it gets the clock ticking. Maybe your age though comes into it too. The question didn't say what age they were, or the questioner didn't say what age they were.
No, they've mentioned the age.
They just started the course, yeah. Because like, you know, some of those things that we talked about earlier on there, you know, talked about young and a young farmer. And again, I suppose just to clarify, for revenue purposes, young is under 35 years of age. Young for the department is under 40. But some things there, as Kevin outlined, have a 5-year limit in farming that you wouldn't want to exceed, because it could rule you out of things. Other cases, it can be a benefit to include yourself in things, because you know, some being under 40 there, and being under 40 at the time you make your first BPS submission is a condition that's in the young farmer scheme there, as we outlined, you know. So to make a BPS application, one would need to have a herd number. So depends on what the person's particular age is and their situation. And again, it's like a lot of these ones, you know, to give a generic answer wouldn't be the solution. There's no silver bullet for everyone. It would be appropriate to discuss your individual situation with your farm advisor or with your consultant.
Okay, last question before we sign off. Kevin, it's for you. Can I apply for National Reserve on a herd number with my mother?
You can, yeah, as long as you're under the 40,000 off-farm income is the biggest thing. Or maybe issues with parents, they might be receiving a pension, like that's all added in on top of your income. So that's the main issue there.
The year, Kevin, the year of income is.
Oh yes, yeah. So you can use 2 years typically. So this year you can use 2020 and 2019. So you usually have a bit of scope there that you're not. It's the year previous or the year 2 years previous to your date of application.
Yeah, just in relation to that that particular query, and I know some people that have just been talking to lately about it, that due to the PUP payment and that last year, as well as maybe time off work, you have to sum up the whole lot together. So it's a little bit trickier maybe than people might think. And also, 1 or 2 people are on the borderline on the 40,000, just saying to me that this year they might take a month off just to try and sneak under the 40,000 for next year. To give them more scope, because depending on the amount of land that you're farming or at the area, it could be well worth your while. So it's just things for people to consider. If you have time on your side in that case. Thanks very much, folks, for all the questions. Brendan, I'll hand back to you to conclude, and thanks to Padraig and Kevin for dealing with it.
Thanks very much, Vivian, there. And I suppose we're just out of time. I'd just like to thank our panelists here tonight, Kevin and Padraig there, for giving us great information here tonight. And indeed, thanks to you, Vivian, there, for facilitating the questions and answers. And I suppose a special thanks there to our viewers at home tonight. We had a lot of farmers on tonight with a lot of questions. There has been some questions there that we haven't answered. We have to follow up with a detailed response there, like Padraig mentioned. We have your email addresses, so we will contact you tomorrow. All that's left for me to say is, look at that, you know, this webinar was recorded. It will be available on the Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel in the coming days. And we will be back again next Wednesday night for the final episode of our 8-week spring webinar series. And the theme of next Wednesday night's event will be farm diversification and the new organic farming scheme. And we'd love if you could join us again for that last episode next Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. So it's good night from me, Brendan Garry, Teagasc Ballinrobe, and thanks again to you all for watching with us tonight. Thanks, folks.
Night.